Is Putin's Russia quietly moving toward a new kind of collapse? From economic pressure to battlefield overstretch, internal dissent, and global isolation, many signs suggest that Russia is entering a period of deep instability. But is this really comparable to the fall of the Soviet Union, or is something more complex taking shape? Today, we break down every factor shaping Russia's uncertain future and what it could mean for Europe, Asia, and the world. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving into a question that's generating intense global debate. Is Putin's Russia heading toward a new collapse? Now, when people hear the word collapse, they often imagine something sudden, dramatic, or similar to what happened to the Soviet Union. But modern Russia is facing a very different set of pressures: economic, political, military, and demographic that create a complex and evolving landscape. In this video, we're not predicting doomsday scenarios. Instead, we're analyzing key indicators shaping Russia's stability and future trajectory. We'll explore how sanctions have transformed the economy, how the ongoing conflict has reshaped Russia's military capabilities, and how internal challenges from population decline to political dissatisfaction are influencing the country's direction. Stay with us as we break down each factor in detail and assess whether Russia is truly on the brink of a major turning point. To understand whether Russia might be heading toward collapse, we first need to examine its economic foundation. The Russian economy has adapted in surprising ways, finding alternative trading partners and restructuring major industries. Despite sanctions, the country continues to generate significant revenue from energy exports, especially to Asian markets. However, this adaptation comes with long-term risks: reliance on fewer buyers, reduced access to Western technology, and a shrinking skilled workforce. Inflation and budget constraints have also created pressure on government spending, especially in sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. While the economy hasn't collapsed, experts note that it is becoming more fragile and dependent on short-term solutions rather than sustainable growth. This slow burning strain doesn't look like a sudden economic crash. It resembles a gradual tightening that could weaken Russia's ability to maintain influence, support military operations, or manage internal demands over time. Another major factor shaping Russia's future is its military overstretch. The ongoing conflict has forced Russia to dedicate enormous resources, both financial and human, to maintain operations. While the military remains large and capable, the extended duration of the conflict has exposed logistical weaknesses, equipment shortages, and challenges in replacing battlefield losses. Modernization efforts slowed due to limited access to foreign components, especially high-tech materials. Meanwhile, recruitment efforts have increasingly relied on older reservists, volunteers, and incentives to attract new soldiers. None of these issues indicate an immediate collapse, but they do point toward long-term strain. Military overstretch weakens the country's ability to project power elsewhere, limits resources available for civilian needs, and can generate domestic dissatisfaction as families face the human cost of conflict. Over time, these pressures contribute to a more unstable environment that affects both national morale and political confidence. Politically, Russia maintains strong control under Vladimir Putin, but internal pressures are quietly rising. Public dissent is heavily restricted, yet dissatisfaction still emerges through silent resistance, economic frustration, and demographic shifts. The younger generation, more connected to global information, often holds different views compared to older citizens. Additionally, regional inequalities add to the tension. Some areas face sharper economic challenges, fewer job opportunities, and reduced government support. The political system remains stable on the surface, but long-term pressure can accumulate even in highly controlled environments. Leadership transitions are another critical factor. With Putin's tenure being exceptionally long, questions about succession and future governance loom large. While none of these suggest an imminent collapse, they indicate a slowly intensifying set of political challenges that could influence Russia's direction in the coming years. Demographics represent one of Russia's most serious long-term issues. The country faces declining population numbers, aging citizens, and reduced birth rates. These trends limit economic growth, shrink the labor force, and increase pressure on social services. The conflict has further accelerated population loss through emigration, casualties, and reduced mobility among working-age individuals. Skilled professionals, from tech workers to engineers, have left Russia in significant numbers, leading to concerns about brain drain. Demographic decline rarely causes sudden collapse, but it does weaken a country's resilience. A shrinking, aging population means fewer taxpayers, fewer innovators, and greater dependency on state support. Over time, this makes it harder for the government to maintain the same level of economic and military activity. When combined with other pressures, demographics become a quiet but powerful force shaping Russia's future trajectory. Russia's international isolation is another factor affecting its long-term stability. While it maintains strong ties with countries like China, Iran, and several Asian and African nations, the loss of Western markets and diplomatic partnerships has led to a more limited geopolitical position. Restrictions on technology, manufacturing equipment, and financial systems create obstacles for long-term growth. Russia has adapted by forming new alliances, but these relationships are not always balanced. They often place Russia in a more dependent position. Additionally, global perceptions have shifted, reducing Russia's influence in international organizations and economic groups. This isolation does not guarantee a collapse, but it does complicate Russia's ability to recover from internal challenges. Without broad international cooperation, rebuilding key industries, attracting investment, or stabilizing the economy becomes more difficult. Over time, this contributes to a more constrained and vulnerable national environment. A major question is whether modern Russia could experience something similar to the Soviet collapse. Experts generally agree that the situations are not identical. The Soviet Union was an enormous multinational empire facing economic stagnation, political fragmentation, and ideological exhaustion. Modern Russia is smaller, more centralized, and not burdened by the same internal divisions. However, there are parallels: economic pressure, political rigidity, military strain, and global isolation all contributed to the Soviet Union's downfall. While Russia today is more unified and adaptable, it faces new kinds of challenges: technological dependence, demographic decline, and sanctions that did not exist in the same way during the Cold War. The comparison is useful for analysis, but it's important to avoid simplistic predictions. Modern Russia may undergo transformation, adjustment, or contraction, but a dramatic collapse like 1991 is far from guaranteed. So what would a collapse look like in modern Russia? Experts suggest it would likely be slow and structural, not sudden. Instead of dramatic political breakdown, we might see long-term economic stagnation, reduced military capabilities, or gradual loss of international influence. Another possible scenario is increased regional autonomy as local governments seek more control over resources and decision-making. A more moderate scenario involves political transition, either through leadership change or policy shifts, that stabilizes the country without collapse. The key point is that collapse can take many forms, and predicting a single outcome oversimplifies the complexity of Russia's situation. What we can confidently say is that Russia faces real pressures: economic, demographic, political, and geopolitical, that will shape its future over the next decade. How these pressures interact will determine whether the country stabilizes, transforms, or continues facing deeper structural challenges. Another important factor is public resilience. Despite economic difficulties, many Russians have adapted to new realities, finding alternative goods, jobs, and opportunities. This adaptability gives the government some stability. Cultural unity, national identity, and controlled information flow also contribute to political cohesion. However, prolonged hardship can gradually erode even strong resilience. If people feel economic pressure with no improvement, if regional inequalities widen, or if military losses continue, dissatisfaction can increase. This doesn't automatically lead to collapse, but it can drive policy changes, leadership adjustments, or public pushback. The key question is how long the population will tolerate rising pressures without significant reform. Russia's future depends not just on state power, but on the lived experience of ordinary citizens, workers, families, young people, and communities across the country. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that Russia is standing at a crossroads. The country is not necessarily heading toward a dramatic collapse, but it is facing multiple long-term challenges that could reshape its future. Economic strain, demographic decline, political pressure, international isolation, and military overstretch are all contributing to a slower, quieter form of instability. Whether this leads to transformation, stagnation, or adaptation will depend on decisions made in the coming years. By leaders, by institutions, and by the Russian population itself, understanding these dynamics helps us look beyond dramatic headlines and focus on the real forces shaping global stability. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest breakdowns. Your support helps us continue delivering clear, balanced, and in-depth content.